Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, I had to be honest, I have no idea what took place. Everything was great. I look back and all of a sudden everything is off. And I'm like, oh God, did they shut my channel down again? It seems like my channel is up, so let's go with it. I don't know how far I was into on the last video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch. I apologize if you guys were here before. I'm going to keep it quick. In fact, I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes. And I'll take a few audience comments. Jesus Christ, it screwed me up. So when there were this guy, this gentleman right here, this is Mossadegh. Mossadegh was, I think, premier Mossadegh. Mossadegh was democratically elected in Iran. The problem with Mossadegh, he was Time Magazine of the Year. The guy was supposedly very popular. People liked him, except for, let's say, some plutocrats, and let's say some governmental entities who were working at the behest of those plutocrats. Mossadegh, oddly enough, rationally enough, wanted to use the resources of Iran for the people of Iran. No shit, that's amazing. He wanted to use the resources of the country to which he found, or he was in, for the people of that particular country. Now, for all of the United States protestations of democracy and freedom and everything else, it's nonsense. Ultimately, the other countries, especially BP, Britain, and the United States, worked in coordination to take him out that seat, foment a revolution, foment a resentment, get him out that seat, and they installed a Shah, a strongman, a brute, a despot, into that spot, who they could essentially interact with and work with. They created a fascist state in the Middle East because that fascist state would allow them to procure the oil at a very decent rate. That's flat fact. Don't take my word for it. I'm going to put the link in itself. This is common knowledge at this point. The CIA has even come out and said, yes, we've done this. The Iranian people eventually overthrew that Shah. Got him out of office. Unfortunately, the only problem with overthrowing Shah is that the person who took over was a strong man. I'm sorry, was a religious maniac. I'm sorry, trying to do two things at once. Check my levels. Yeah. Was a religious maniac. And in being a religious maniac, had somewhat of a theocratic rule. That said, there were devolved powers. There was this kind of, you can call it this kind of governmental thing that underlied the fact that this theocrat was in office. Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, the United States has been after Iran ever since. You may hear people say, well, we had a great relationship with Iran. Israel had a great relationship with Iran. That's because we put a Shah, we put a brutal despot into that spot who was perfectly in line with our orders, or perfectly in line with the United States interests. He was not in line with Iranian interests. He didn't care two shits about Iranian interests. He cared, my pockets are getting fat. These countries are working to make sure I can stay in power. The world is great. Well, they got him out that seat. You can understand the Iranian people having a bee in their bonnet about the United States behavior in the Middle East, especially with regards to their country. Now, I've made the point that Donald Trump has been working to topple the Iranian regime, or the Iranian government. And not just topple, militarily topple if necessary, that government, that has become the United States policy. There have been other YouTubers that supposedly think they know better than what I'm saying in this case. I've been following this story going all the way back for almost a year. And the entire time, Donald Trump has seemed to set his sights on Iran. It would be insane that Donald Trump would surround himself with such Iranian Warhawks if he wasn't setting his sights on Iran. And beyond that, you've had people come out saying that it was a policy of the United States at this point. John Bolton for one, and Rudy Giuliani for the other. Jesus Christ. I have to get my other mic fixed. This mic annoys me. I have another one, but the other one stopped working after update. Alright, so right here. This is Zero Hedge. President Donald Trump is committed to regime change in Iran, says Rudy Giuliani, Trump's newest controversial attorney, although perhaps not for long, and longtime informal advisor. That's funny because Trump can't keep people in because they're so corrupt. Speaking to reporters after a Saturday keynote to the Iran Federation Freedom Convention for Democracy and Human Rights, that is Orwellian. I said that before, but it is. In Washington, Giuliani said, we got a president who is tough, who does not listen to the people who are naysayers, and a president who is committed to regime change as we are. In other words, pulling out of the Iran deal is now being conflated with regime change in Iran. The videos are below. You can see it for yourself. But hey, maybe HA knows better than Rudy Giuliani. Maybe he knows better than John Bolton. Take a look at this. So this is John Bolton, National Security Advisor. Rudy Giuliani has taken over in the sense of Trump's defense team. Yeah, and I want to say something else about this coming forward. But let's just, John Bolton.
Viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs, and that opposition is centered in this room today. I have said for over 10 years since coming to these events that the declared policy of the United States of America should be the overthrow of the mullahs regime in Tehran. The behavior and the objectives of the regime are not going to change, and therefore the only solution is to change the regime itself. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran.
Before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. It sounds like he's talking about regime change too, and that's to the National Defense Advisor. But hey, maybe HA knows better. What about Tom Pompeo? Mike Pompeo. This is Politico. This goes back all the way to 2017. Trump allies push White House to consider regime change in Tehran. Well, he's Secretary of State now. The policy of the United States should be regime change in Iran, said Tom Cotton, who speaks regularly to White House officials about foreign policy. I don't see anyone can say America can be safe as long as you have a power in a theocratic despotism, he added. I thought he was talking about Saudi Arabia, but apparently he's talking about Iran. Cotton advocated a combination of economic, diplomatic, and covert actions to pressure the Tehran government to support internal domestic dissent. He's talking about creating terrorism inside that country in order to foment a revolution. That's what he's talking about. Just so we're clear. Essentially what they did in Libya and what they started to do in Syria when they started putting in terrorists and stuff like that to undermine the government. That's what they're talking about. Let's be clear. In the country, he noted that Iran has numerous minority ethnic groups, including Arabs, Turkmens, Balkhs, who aren't enthusiastic about living in a Persian Shiite despotism. As a member of Congress, Trump's CIA director Mike Pompeo last year publicly called for congressional action to change Iranian behavior and ultimately the Iranian regime. And Derek Harvey, the Trump National Security Council's director, Middle East Affairs, told the audience at the Conservative Hudson Institute in August 2015 that the Obama administration's hope of working with moderates to steer Iran in a friendlier direction was a misread of the nature and character of the regime, whose structure, he said, he has carefully studied. He's carefully studied. He knows what he's talking about. Look, there's one person after the next who is in Trump's ear pushing for regime change. I'm picking on HA here. Because I think he's a friend of the show, and I get slightly annoyed about this part because I don't think he's being honest with himself. Donald Trump is pushing for regime change. I don't know how else can you put it. Netanyahu is in his ear. He's been pushing for regime change going back for God knows how long, ever since he's been a baby. Mike Bolton, I don't know why I keep calling that man Mike Bolton. John Bolton, that maniac, wants regime change. He's in the president's ear. Mike Pompeo, he wants regime change. He's in the president's ear. Rudy Giuliani, he wants regime change. He's in the president's ear. Tom Cotton, he wants regime change. He's in the president's ear. All of these people are in the president's ear. This list is not exhaustive, but this is a long list of people who are pushing for the idea of regime change in that country. But I'm sure AJ knows better. I'm pretty sure he knows something I don't. This is, and by the way, before I end this, the two maniacs, or one of the other maniacs that's pushing for it, Netanyahu. Just remember, Netanyahu is a liar. Anytime you see his face, you should think this man is a liar. Anything that's coming out of his mouth is a liar, especially if he's talking about some kind of action abroad. This was the same guy that went into Congress telling people that Americans are going to be welcomed in Iraq, and that people of Iran are going to look at the fruits of what's taking place and say, yes, we need to do something different. Fact is, when the United States attacked Syria, do you know that the people of Iraq protested the fact that they did that? The people of Iraq are not even for what you're talking about. It's just you, maniac. This guy is a liar. Let's take a look. I'm showing a few of his lies, or two of them anyway.
Netanyahu warned the United Nations of an Iranian nuclear bomb. The imagery was simplistic, and so was the message.
By next spring, at most by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage.
That's called a lie. That's called a lie. He's been screaming that going back to 1992, that Iran was on the brink of a nuclear weapon. Fact is, cables from his own security services had said that Iran was not in a stage where they were looking for this kind of bomb. That yes, their capacity per se was getting better, but it wasn't necessarily in the direction of a bomb. He knew that. He's lying at the moment. He's out here lying. Let's take a look at one more. And I always say never forget this, because this is dramatically important in the time that we're talking.
Saddam's regime, I guarantee that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Did taking out Saddam Hussein have enormous positive reverberations throughout the region? Did it? No, it didn't. He's lying. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a biased actor that wants the United States to leverage its military to attack Iran. That's what it boils down to. All of these people are liars. So, yeah, you should be very wary of the people who are pushing you into the war and people who are whispering in the reality show host here. And if you're going to say that Donald Trump is not looking for a war, if you're going to say he's not looking for something to get that regime out of that seat, I don't know what you're using. I don't know what you're using. Let's see. You do realize that the majority of Iranians, 70% of the 35, wants regime change too. They don't want to live in a theocracy, but HA is wrong. Yeah. Then let them do it. Then let them do it. What is that? Like, the overwhelming majority of the Americans are not on board with what takes place from the standpoint of politics or media in this country. It is up to the people of the country to change it. What are you talking about? What do you expect the United States to do in this regard? What do you expect the United States to legally do? What they want in that country, I don't give a shit if it's 90%. That has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with this country. They can handle their own affairs. That's not up to us. Yeah, HA is wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. My point is, just so you can be clear on my point, because what you said never addressed my point. The United States wants a war in Iran. The United States is trying to regime change. All of these other people who are around them are pushing for regime change. If HA is making the argument that that's not what's taking place, that regime change is not what's taking place, then he's flat out wrong. And fact is, your message here doesn't touch it one bit. Doesn't touch it one bit. And by the way, I don't even accept it to be true. I have no idea. What I would tell you is the majority of Iranians don't want the United States and imperial power coming in, blowing the shit out of them, murdering a bunch of them. I don't know how many Iranians want that.